Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
You and I are kind of similar. You may even be more good-hearted than me. I feel like you. Well,
but in our longing hearts, we're all the same.
Mutual respect and
yes.
A boundary might have been crossed
Yes.
that you, right?
That's
So
correct.
just an example
That's a
of,
good example.
it is a great example. I appreciate that for
Yes.
giving me the example to even work with.
Let's be the change we want to see.
I've never seen differences negative. I've always been attracted to and intrigued by it. But we're looking for how are we similar? How are we the same? How can we all just get along?
We are links in a chain. Unimportant.
Hey.
What's up, everyone?
Hey, I am Dr. Lynn.
I'm Justin.
And welcome to Working It Out Across Generations. If it's your first time here or your third, second, or 55th time here, well, we just want you to know that we are a show that's committed to talking about all things conflict and giving you some tips, techniques, and our own thoughts about how you might engage in conflict in a more productive way. And we are, as always, we really like our topics around here. So we have a great topic today, and Justin is going to tell you all about it.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about is mixing business with pleasure a recipe for success or disaster? I started thinking about this honestly a while ago. As professionally, I've now kind of shifted out of the nonprofit and education system, right? And I've started going to corporate America in some spaces, and I'm just seeing how they do things differently as far as keeping up team morale, as far as celebrating team success.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really, really interesting. You know, I saw and see a lot of stuff in media and in the shows we watch. I know one of them is the show Ballers. It's on HBO or something like that. And, you know, yes, that's like NFL ranking, you know, corporate America, right? I'm not speaking about, you know, those levels, but in those levels, you know, there's things like team parties. There's things like, you know, company outings and team dinners and all of these different things where you are indulging in personal endeavors that you do like to do on your own time while mixing in business and those kinds of conversations. And so I just started thinking about, as I've seen, you know, some stuff in my own life, kind of what are other people doing? Where did this come from? This idea of mixing business with pleasure. I feel like when we hear that statement overall, there is, I don't know if there's like a negative connotation, but there's definitely, you know, the never do or never mix in this sentence of mixing business with pleasure. And that has to come from somewhere, right? So I think that my young brain just kind of started, you know, thinking about all these things as I'm starting to experience it myself. And I thought it would just be an interesting topic to talk about, as, you know, we have plenty of people here who have, you know, worked in all different fields and in all different kinds of environments with all different kinds of people, in all different kinds of team settings, right? In which they do different things for different, you know, levels of morale that need to be achieved at that time. So I just thought it was really, really interesting. I'm glad that we're here to talk about it right now.
Yeah, I think it is. I hadn't really thought about it. I know I'll speak in a little bit about generationally, because I do remember some messages from there. I haven't really thought about it because I think I've been working for so long. My older brain just goes to.
You said it.
Well,
not
you
me.
said young brain, your young brain, which is true.
But I never said old.
No, I didn't
So
either.
just,
I said older. Believe me, I thought about that before I said it, because I'm like, yeah, my older brain goes to that is just something that's kind of par for the course that I've never really thought about. I can't say I've never really thought about, because as you have gone out to different events, right? I think I've always had some bit of advice for you around that. I think that I don't know that there's a lot of thinking about it, rules that people are passing down universally, but I think I've mentored a great deal of young people, and I think mentors probably do have some bit of advice to their mentees about the mix of business and pleasure, what the do's and don'ts, things like that, which I think is really important. I think that companies, families, friends, coworkers, mentors, I do think that you should be thinking about this as pleasure is being mixed with business more and more, and that business is being talked about right during these things. Because look, I grew up in the time when people would just write off a dinner, even though business was never even talked about, but just because we could write it off, right?
That's funny.
But now I do see the mix more of business and pleasure, you know, not like the holiday parties where people are usually aren't doing that, but sometimes they do, but that's not the intention. But these are intentionally, you know, let's talk on the golf course, or, you know, catch this person on the golf course, or let's go out to dinner and talk about this. And I think that there are ways in which, particularly if you are someone up and coming or wanting to be up and coming, newbie on the scene, I think there are ways in which you can be advised to your advantage of the do's and don'ts when you mix or are asked to attend something that mixes business with pleasure.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, you know, yeah, I don't think, you know, I was hearing things of like, you know, yeah, I don't think I heard a lot of never do it. I think it was more just like, you know, if and when you do, here are things to consider.
Right.
Right. So when you talk about having alcohol at team functions, right, and things of that nature, of course, the conversation became, you know, always make sure you're watching how much you drink and things of that nature. You want to stay professional. You want to remember you're still in a professional setting, right? So I think for me, the interest sparked with, you know, the never aspect of it, because I feel like that's what I've heard, and that's how this topic was first introduced to me as a kid. And I think that there's a lot of benefits to mixing business with pleasure, you know, if you do it the correct way, right? I think especially now that we're seeing, you know, generationally more young people stepping into these corporate spaces and into, if not corporate spaces, just more leadership roles and things of that nature within work, you know, I think it's important to, in a way, cater to your audience, which is really, you know, employees or coworkers and things of that nature. So I've heard of friends that work on teams that have done dinners at like Top Golf and like things like that, and
Okay.
you know, implementing, you know, kind of like a physical activity with it too. Or, you know, there's just, you know, like a happy hour. I've gone into like an office before at a happy hour wine thing they were doing because the day was over. They're winding down. They're, you know, celebrating some sort of quotas that they just hit, and you know, people are drinking, talking, hanging out with that stuff. So I think that, you know, as far as, you know, as the young bulls are coming up and coming into these spaces, you know, there is a way to, I think, cater to, you know, your teams, your business, your company, right? But it's about, where's that line? Is there a line to even be drawn? I think that's always going to be the question here. But the question that really came up for me here within this was, you know, is there a line that even needs to be drawn, and where? Because I love how you brought up the golf course. You know, that's another thing I was taught. You know, like a business gets done on the golf course.
And always did for a long time, and people were excluded from that.
Yep. Learn how to play golf. Learn how to, you know, at least hold your own out there, and, you know, just let the rest kind of take its course. And I've heard, you know, real life stories of that being true, of that being something that people, you know, implemented into their own strategy for, you know, kind of reeling in and closing in that last deal. And so it's really, really interesting, you know, as I'm just stepping into the business world, more of the business world myself. I'm starting to think about these things. And I think that, you know, a lot of young people are starting to think about these things and have been thinking about these things. And what better way to have this conversation and analyze kind of where people are at than to bring this to our platform where we talk all things conflict and we provide generational perspective. So,
yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to think about, is that should there be a line drawn? Because I know from my work, just to get people to businesses, especially to recognize that we are whole people, bringing your whole self right to your work environment has been sort of the mantra of maybe the last 15 years or so. And there's been a lot of talk about, can you really do that, right? Can you honestly bring your whole self? But in that vein, right, if you're looking to do that, then extending business with pleasure can make sense as a way for people to get to know each other, their co-workers, and even their supervisors, right? But managers. But it's also, I think, comes with a lot of questions too that don't always get said. I do think also that it's great because, like I said earlier, there are things that people have been excluded from, either because financially they can't invest in something like that, or we want to talk about golf, right? There's far too many clubs that have been exclusionary to certain groups of people. And so business discussions, a lot of people were left out of as a result of that. So I think that it is something that people need to spend more time thinking about, because you can't, I don't think that you can just throw a dinner, you know, say, everybody, you know, let's go out to eat or whatever. You think about things like when people are fasting, right? And they have to be fasting. So what does that mean? Are they excluded? Are they included? I mean, are you thinking about the kinds of things where people are not engaging in certain things and therefore they're left out? Or are you just like, oh, well, you know, you can come or you can't. We extended the invitation, and that's on you when you know full well the kinds of discussions that are going to take place that people are going to miss out on. And I can say from me growing up, this was never, well, first of all, let me just say that I grew up around people who didn't have jobs where they had to really think about, you know, business and pleasure. They had working class jobs. And so it wasn't about climbing the ladder always necessarily. And also they knew that, I don't even think they thought about, well, how do I get in on these business discussions that are happening? That they weren't on that level. And nothing wrong with that. People had to make a living and do what they had to do. My dad worked 3 jobs, by my whole life, or certainly most 2 my whole life. And he worked at the post office, was the main job. He wasn't really thinking about that kind of thing. So I really didn't hear a lot about it, but I do remember my mom and dad, once I was starting to be in places, even like holiday parties, right? How do you behave during a holiday party? Because if your manager's there, I don't care what they're doing, right? They're still taking note of you and everybody else that they manage. And so you can see them doing what they want to do, getting drunk, whatever they're doing, acting wild on the dance floor. But, and believe me, I've seen a lot of years of that, a lot of years of that. Right. And with no remorse or apologies from upper management about their behavior. Right?
I'm new and I've seen some of this stuff already. It's interesting.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. But my mom was always one for one. You can't do what everybody else do. Right. I grew up with that mantra. And we've said that
to us.
That's right.
We grew up with that too.
Can't do what everybody else does. Especially if you are trying to climb the ladder, because everybody is not seen the same way. Sorry, they're just not. And we have to really pay attention to that on the other end of things. Like I said, if you're planning these events, but generationally, I didn't know anyone. Number one, I know people were golfing, so don't even try it. It was just that it wasn't the thing that it is now. Right. And certainly not in a lot of different communities of color, but it wasn't that. But it wasn't the thing that people were talking about at all in my circle of growing up around people. They were really just trying to make it 9 to 5 and get their check and get out. And they did their pleasure with their friends and their family. Nobody's thinking about work. There were when my mom worked for a small business one time. The owners were family friends, so we would see them at functions, family functions, cookouts, or going out to dinner or coming to the house for dinner. But that was a whole different thing.
Yeah. This is really interesting. It's just keeps the ball rolling, and I think now we just want to get into some areas in which mixing business with pleasure works, or that we've seen or heard of areas in which it does work. And I think first area that came to our mind was retreats or conferences, right? These are great times to not only network and put yourself out there, get to know other people in other spaces, right? But we've also seen that, there's plenty of, whether it's drinking or other activities that go into the conference kind of itinerary that allows for you to kind of be a little bit more laid back, even while still being on the clock. And I think that this is like what I was first exposed to as far as mixing business with pleasure and any aspect of what that means. I know that when I was younger, I tagged along with my parents to conferences and retreats, and so did my brother. And so there were ones that we went to where there was like a karaoke night, I'm pretty sure, at one point, and everyone came down after an hour or two from the day being over to come down, hang out, do karaoke, and have a good time. And from that to dinners to there was a thing where we got kind of like a meditative kind of practice to go through. We got to walk a labyrinth, right? So there was a whole lot of, guided things within that conference. And, you also had the free reign to, just be in your room or hang out, do your own thing, call your family, read a book, have coffee. You could literally do whatever you wanted when the time was yours. And so I think retreats and conferences for sure are an area where it works. And I think this is probably, for me at least, the number one area that you can guarantee success.
Yeah, I think it's really important on the other end of that is in your planning a retreat or a conference that you really look at who your audience is. And while some things may be fun for you or for the majority, you want to make sure that everybody at least has something that they can say yes to. I would say more than one something, depending on the length of the conference or the retreat, right? Anything over one day should be more than one something that people can say yes to. And also, if you really want to do it well, you would involve people in it, right? Whether it's a small committee or whether it's everybody, if you're not a big office that's planning this, that people's voices are heard, they have input into the plan.
Absolutely. Next, we said team building activities, right? Specific to team building. We named a couple already, but I think another one that I heard of recently that was really, really interesting was a friend of mine is on a team working at a school, and they went to some sort of escape room, and they did an escape room together, which was like kind of exercising their brain as well as, building that kind of camaraderie and teamwork within, getting out of this escape room. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I've never heard of that as something being used, in work, but even then,
yeah, I've heard of that.
I think that's really cool. And I think that that's something that, I know for sure in my personal time has, made me feel that sense of team building when I'm around people. So I can only imagine that a team that spends a lot of time together, possibly brainstorming and bouncing off ideas to each other, that could be an area for sure in which, you're exercising your brain, but it is more leisurely to the fact that, you're not necessarily locked in that room for real, right? It's a fun aspect to exercise your brain. And I think that there's plenty of things that we could do like that. But I thought that was really, really interesting. I've always heard more of the like physical activity, sport kind of thing as something used for kind of like celebrating team success or whatever it is, kind of like a party aspect of whatever, right? I've even heard of companies throwing parties, full of throwing parties, right? But I think it can be as simple as either breaking bread or exercising your brain together with something like an escape room or anything like that. But really, really team building oriented kind of activities, I think for sure are another way that you can mix that in.
Yeah, I hate escape rooms. So
Damn,
for me, that would not be fun, but
I love them.
But I think you think about as an employee, right? You think about what is it that is, as long as it doesn't go against your morals and values, right? What is it that you would participate in anyway, right? And I've put together lots of team building activities and team building days and retreats. And I know that they have been very successful in combining business, really talking about work plans or projects and having fun and working together, leaning on one another and really building that camaraderie. So you may not hit it big on every activity, but I do think that this one is where the mixing of business and pleasure can really work well.
What do you think are some of the ones that worked from your days of organizing events, organizing conferences, like the team building stuff?
Yeah, I think the ones where people really do have to help each other and the ones where people get to look at their strengths, right? So we've done an activity where, what is the particular tool that you think you're most like? It may be a screwdriver, a hammer, and you explain, right, the qualities of it. And then you put together something, a project, or if they're working on something together, right, as a team and it hasn't been going well, then with that information, right, as a particular tool that you think you are most like, then you start assigning each other parts of the project that you are trying to complete. I think one's also where you learn something about each other. Have been really successful because then they carry over when people do sit down to have a meal together in that particular retreat or conference, and the conversation carries over. And if there's been some kind of impasse, like in the conflict, in communicating with one another, that sometimes that knowing each other's stories really does break the ice in certain areas and keeps people from holding grudges or feeling like there's no way this person is ever going to contribute to this in a constructive way, because now you know a little something about it, and you either can relate or you can empathize with them.
I like that. Lastly, I said various sports team activities, right? I think that, you know, for me, when I started thinking about this topic and dissecting this from, you know, my own lens, I was thinking about, you know, all of just the imagery of what I've seen, but also just what I've lived, right? So I know that we brought up golf before as something that's helped. You know, I've definitely heard many stories of that, but even something as simple as like bowling or like shooting pool, right? Like shooting pool either after work, right? Or maybe you've got, you know, a longer lunch break or something like that, and you go meet up with a client, something like that, and you hang out for a little bit. But it's something where, you know, I think the implementation of moving your body really helps a lot of people connect to their thoughts, connect to, you know, really where they're coming from, what they're thinking about, but also their mission as far as getting whatever their goals met. And I think that sports overall is something that helps a lot with that, right? Even if it's just watching a game, right? Watching fights that are on at night, right? Something like that where you can get the team together. I think that that's a great way to build more of the camaraderie. And you get to kick back a little bit more, right? There's so many aspects and connections to business, to sports, to things like that that we've all heard about, that I think that, you know, it's really one of those ways that we get to embody all of those things being true at once. And you obviously want to consider, like you brought up before, you know, people's physical capabilities. Yes. Not everyone's able to, you know, it's kind of making me say that, she's not. But yeah, it's true. It's definitely true. You know, obviously not everyone can move the same way, do the same things, right? But that's why you find a way to meet everyone in the middle in some capacity, right? And so if it's not playing, if it's not physically being able to move your body, throwing on something and, you know, sitting down breaking bread is cool too. So I've just seen it on all different, it come from in all different directions and all different angles. And I think that this is one that, you know, hands down, get the job done.
Yeah, I think that the sports thing is a way, and the various sports. You know, I did see a few companies coming up where they had like a softball team, but I think you've got to do it in ways where people feel like they can participate in a whole lot of different ways. And the ways they participate are just as important to show up and be the ones that cheer the team on as it is to be on the team, right? Performing the sport. I think that is really crucial for people to know that there's that this week or this month, season, whatever we're doing softball, but we could be doing basketball or something else, or bowling, as you said, something different that people can do. But again, taking note of physical capabilities. But I do think that I have seen that people have been able to participate in the team sports without being too competitive, but actually really allowing people to have a place. Let me be a good sport now and shout out to Gordon and Jan who tuned in. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so let's talk about those precautions in this, right? Things to consider if you're mixing business with pleasure, because we're not saying don't do it, but we are saying that you want to think about a lot of different things. So boundaries and missions, right? I think boundaries are incredibly important. People have to be able to say what their boundaries are, particularly because a lot of times boundaries go to, like I said, people's morals and values. So like when you said pool, where is pool taking place? Right? There are people who absolutely will not set foot in like a bar, or, you know, even a pool hall, if it is something that they feel like is not an environment that they can feel comfortable in, or that would be okay with their family, things like that. So I think boundaries are really important. Boundaries around how loose folks get, because I think, like I said, I've seen some loose stuff happening, including the boundary of people in not even just relationships. That look, that we are in 2025 hookups. Hey, set those boundaries ahead of time. Really important. And then missions, right? So what is this about? Does this line up with the mission of the company? The mission, even if you have a team, you should have a team mission. Does this line up? Or is this just, hey, y'all, we had a hard week, let's just hang out, right? It's like, that's okay to do. But if you're talking about mixing work with business, with pleasure, with the intent at some point the business is really going to take place during this activity, then make sure that it is aligning with your mission.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think, the boundaries is really, really important, making sure you're checking in with yourself. I think those self check-ins are just so important. I'm an advocate always for, starting with you. Right. And so remembering, kind of what you're going into that space for, what it's about, how you want to, portray yourself, how you want to come off, how you want to be perceived, even though that doesn't even really matter at the end of the day when it comes to, what we think and stuff. But it is about professionalism. It is about, discernment. And I think that's one of the most important skills that we can learn for ourselves, as it's going to help, positively impact all of the other external areas of our lives. Right. Yeah. So discernment is everything. And I think, spending that time with yourself before you go to these spaces is really important too. Right. Being a little bit more intentional. Right. So even if let's say you're traveling there, right, you have your headphones in, right, but maybe you're thinking a little bit about it, on the way there or while you're getting ready. Right. You don't want to change up your routine, but it's really just about putting yourself in that headspace to, prepare to step into this environment in which you do have to be able to do both, right? Two things at once, which is a difficult thing for any and everyone, but harder for, some people more than others. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking of when we were working for Ears, which was a great program for teens, and just really we would do things like take them out to dinner at a restaurant, and the intention was business in terms of we would discuss a little business, but the business of really acclimating you as a young person, getting ready to go into these environments as to what are the things that you want to do in terms of the way that you carry yourself, including thinking about what you're going to wear, right? Thinking about what you're going to say, how you're going to network, how you're even feeling. Am I really nervous? What does that mean? Will I be like putting stuff in my mouth constantly because I'm nervous?
Off-limit topics.
Right. Oh, that's a big one.
Making sure you don't cross certain boundaries, or you don't bring up certain information, right?
Yes.
Make sure you stay in a sweet spot.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think a lot of that goes, ahead of time. And it makes in the moment even that much easier to deal with. You just feel a little bit more equipped.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to say that things will get easier for people, but you do feel more equipped to step up to the plate.
Yeah, because you got to get that line like, yes, it's pleasure, but it's still business.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So the next, there's somebody who's singing outside.
Someone, I don't know, yeah.
And it seems, the way they're singing seems appropriate for this next one. Alcohol at team functions, All right. This is a big one, I think. It is.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, it's huge.
I think so.
Honestly, those of you who do not drink, I think is easier because you really are not tempted. But I shouldn't say that, because if you're recovering, then you could be very tempted. And it's one of the things that I think is important for businesses to really think about when you're talking about including alcohol. People who are recovering going to be comfortable in those environments, not just do we have enough soft drinks, right? I mean, I went to a function just a couple of weeks ago, and it was at a school. It was a fundraiser, and they did it up. It was beautiful. But everything was the alcohol, the specific special drinks. And I actually had to ask, is there anything non-alcoholic? Because they were pushing. And they were like, oh, yeah, we have water. We have sparkling water. And I do drink, but I don't drink and drive. And I had driven. So
Fair.
I don't know.
Fair.
So I think it's really important. I have seen people pressure, in particular, young people up and coming. Hey, you want to hang with the big bosses? You better be matching us, throwing them back, right? 1 for 1 or whatever. I've seen that happen. And I think you got to be prepared in those circumstances. Know yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
You know me, I'm a lightweight. So if I'm taking one, I better make sure that my mouth is prepared to say the right thing.
It's hilarious to watch. Oh, it's hilarious to watch. Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness. But I have to say, it is something that you gotta really be prepared for, and think about, especially if you are putting together an event, right, for your company.
Absolutely.
Something you want to say about it?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Be
Okay.
careful. Have some discernment for yourself. That's it.
Oh, so wait a minute, Gordon, you said it takes one person who had too much, and if the team is losing, they can get real rowdy, and sports bars can be crazy. Yes, and people have events there. Nevertheless, they have events there, right? So I know that you gotta watch for folks, and we've got to think about things ahead of time when you're talking about including alcohol.
Yeah, I'm a big read the room guy. Read the energy, read the feel, and when you feel it's not just chill, leisurely pleasure, then it's like, okay, we're not here to party, right? We're just here to relax a little bit. So,
yeah. Learn how to nurse a drink.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, but think about it. What I think about is how, if people are telling you you need to catch up in your drink, they've been watching you. So that's something you got to consider, is that people do pay attention at these events, right? And
they might even try to bait you.
Bad, yeah.
Might even try to bait you
for good or bad.
People are taking notes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah. Personal feelings informing business decisions. I think that happens regardless of whether you're mixing business with pleasure. Sure. I have seen it. I've seen it over and over again, particularly when someone gets in their head that they just don't like this particular person. But I also have seen it turn around in mixing business with pleasure. But I do think that you have to really think about, well, why am I making this decision? What am I basing it on? And would I base it on that? Were we in the office, right? Or am I just kind of taking note of the behavior or the person itself? It's interesting. I can remember early in my career, gosh, I've made so many mistakes. And if you're really going to be successful, you're going to have to take risks, and you are going to make lots of mistakes. Get prepared for that. And I showed up way too casual for what was supposed to be a casual retreat. And I can remember folks really questioning, was I the right person to be leading the particular workshop that I came in to lead based on my attire, right? And I'm always going to bring my best to whatever it is I'm at. So of course I was excellent in my work. And so I did overhear conversations of people standing up for me and saying, hey, if this is how she chose to come, she brought what she was supposed to bring, and let's keep it there.
Yeah, I think this goes as far as even, like being stressed and like going into a meeting or decision making, process with that. I just don't think that, it's not that feelings can mix with business. It's that, it's another discernment point of, you just want to know, like, you don't want to play favorites, and then you don't want to play non-favorites, right? Like, you don't want to if you actually don't like this person, you don't want to like add fuel to the fire by kind of like, even if they're playing with you or not, like kind of playing their game of just like, well, I don't like you, so I'm going to tit for tat, right? Whether that's trying to do better at my position and things like that, which, healthy competition in some areas works. But, I think some people have taken that as far as, trying to get someone fired or trying to get someone kind of not talked about in positive lights in the office, right? Any sort of leg up, right, that you're trying to accomplish, which I think is a good thing. But, there's just a way to do these things ethically. There's a way to do these things without, damaging other people, but also damaging yourself. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you don't want to be, emotionless, but, you obviously don't want to be too emotional when it comes to these crunch time decisions, and letting outside things, impact what's going on in this particular area. It's like I said, and I've said a lot, discernment for where you're at and what needs to be done when you're there, I think is one of those, really, really important skills that takes you from, any level that you want to achieve to the next one.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting too, because as you're talking and thinking about this, like personal feelings informing business decisions. And I can remember working in a particular environment where some of the people that I worked for were just, I won't call them horrible people. I just say they just behaved in horrible ways. And so outside of it, outside when they would do like a party or something, my choosing to go would be to show my loyalty to the company, but then I had to run into some of these people and I had to decide how I would interact with them based on, I have personal feelings, but can I still, be gracious or polite, right, kind or whatever, but also not fall for the okie doke, because tale of caution, I was my supervisor, who was a horror to work for. I found out why she was a horror to work for when we were in the ladies' room, and she offered me an opportunity to, really get close to her by doing drugs with her. And I was smart enough to go, sister, we ain't never gonna be that close ever. But really, you had said sometimes they bait you, right? And you don't know what is happening. So you want to, it's not that you want to keep your feelings out of it, but you want to be able to manage your feelings, keep them in check, so that your gut also is also alive and active, and it can inform you, no, you don't want to do that. Or I think that this is a sincere opportunity that they are offering.
Yeah. And I dealt with a lot more of this in school. I feel like I had a lot more like teachers or like administrators who, had like a personal thing with me and, took it out with punishing me in certain ways. And, there were obviously times where I was wrong. And then obviously times where it was clear, like you just had a vendetta, like you had a thing against me. You just want me to like, in your own way that you think is effective, kind of like pay for my mistakes and, whatever it is. And so, I think that people can read, kind of what's going on. People can read when you're genuinely trying to inquire about them, right? Get a little closer, build some camaraderie. And then people can tell when, you just have a little bit of an agenda, right? I love that you brought up bringing up your gut, because like you need that, right? That's an intuition. That's your body having a physiological response. And those are sensors and radars going off inside you saying this feels either good or not, sincere or not. And, I definitely dealt with that a lot more in school. There's so many teachers, oh my gosh, who had something out for me. But
you're that kind of kid, just a way advanced for folks.
Or these people were whack. I don't know how else we're gonna, like, I don't know.
Whole host of reasons.
You won't say people are whack. I'll call them bullies. Like, these were bullies, I don't know how you're 40-something trying to, like, get big on a kid. Like, that's weird. But, that's just my take. But leave that stuff out of it when you're in those environments. Is this lining up with what we need to get done when it needs to get done?
Yeah.
And keep it at that. I think that's really what it is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into this, because now it's bringing back memories too. Just
So many
the
memories. Oh my gosh.
discernment piece, right? I can remember that there was a team of us. Oh my gosh, we all intensely disliked our supervisor. Intensely disliked our supervisor. And at one point, she called herself making an effort to really be somebody that we could like and be around. And she invited us to her house, our home, for cocktails and something else. And none of us wanted to go. But I gathered folks together and said, look, how about if we all go? Because just in thinking about what's the message we're sending if everybody says no, we may think it's you're unlikable, honey, so shape up. But I doubt that would be the message that she would get. And she was the type to let personal feelings inform her business decisions.
So all of you would have been.
So we all went.
Yep.
We all went, which I thought was a good move. We had a great time together. I'll be real. We went out afterwards and talked about it like a dog. I'm sorry. We just did. We were young.
I mean, that's how you do it. Yeah, you don't want to do it in her face.
We wouldn't do it in her face. I thought we were very gracious and really tried.
I think y'all did it well.
Have a good time. And we're thankful that, hey, look, she made an effort or whatever. Got back to where she was exactly the same. But
Jeez.
But
read the room.
I mean, some of y'all may be dealing with the same kind of thing, but I just feel like you gotta really think about it. If your first reaction is, I don't like her, I'm not doing nothing. Is that really the best reaction, particularly if you are trying to do something with your career? Because maybe it won't lead to a higher position, but it leads to you growing in character and in strength. Mm-hmm. So that when you get, because let me tell you, I went through a lot of bosses who were something else to work for. So to build that muscle of being able to be gracious, still be able to have a voice, having a voice, saying what you need to say, but not staying in this place of, I got nothing for you, don't ask me. Like, not staying there is really important, because you're going to need that character build when you do get to a place where you are in a position to move up or to be the supervisor manager, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you hear this often in like sports, what I'm about to say, but it's kind of like that teammate who you would want on your team, but you would hate to play against. Like, you just, if you're with them, it's like, all right, look, I even have my own feelings being on the team with them, but they heck of a player, right? Heck of a person in this role. Right. So when we're in this role and we're in this mode, I know things are going to get done. And again, that's just being able to, have some of that discernment for yourself. So.
Yeah. So overall, I'd say we're not against it.
No.
But we do think that there needs to be more thought that goes into it, not just, let's all, let's take this meeting to the bar, right?
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And we're people who, organize conferences, organize events, for our own personal business. And so, we're thinking about these things all the time actively with you. And as, I brought up earlier, for the past, at least year and some change, I've really started to step into more of the corporate spaces from the nonprofits and from, the school system. And so, really just bringing some of these thoughts and things that I've seen to the show, right? That's really just what went into, us talking about this topic today, because it's really, really interesting. It's really, really interesting. And I think we're only, going to be doing more of that, right? We're moving towards so many things we're moving towards as far as the, workforce and the systems of the workforce and changes within it that, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of pleasure being mixed in with business as a way to get people to continue to do their job, if not do their job, do it better And
Yeah.
so,
And even at
drawing
the
that
work
line is really
site,
important. Yeah.
I've seen that tech companies, a lot of them. I mean, oh my
for sure,
gosh.
for sure.
In an effort to keep people there at their desks working,
Yep.
they have every kind of treat imaginable
Yep.
and
Basketball
activities.
hoops.
Yeah,
I've
that's
played,
right.
I played during hours.
Yeah,
For people. I'm like,
all of that.
wow.
So you're going to see more and more of it, I think, and we really are saying, pay attention, give it some thought, and make sure that you are able to discern. This isn't just let's go hang out as coworkers, right? And you're not going to discuss business. This is something that is business will be discussed at some point during whatever this event is. And so how do you handle that? How do you manage you and your goals for the particular activity, right?
Absolutely.
That you're engaging in. So
Absolutely.
I thought this was a really good one. And just want to say this, right? We are going to be presenting within the next 3 weeks. For the next 3 weeks, we're going to be presenting the best of working it out across generations while we get to work on season 4 for you, new, different, and awesome coming up for you. So we want you to check us out. Right. And here you go. Watch us on e360tv.com, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, all of the places that we are showing up. And you can always watch us and the replays on our Facebook page at Working It Out TV Show, or you can catch us on YouTube at Working It Out Across Generations. And if you want to get in touch with us, let us know what you're thinking. Working It Out Across the Generations at e360tvlive.com is the email where you can reach us.
Absolutely. You know what we say, you know how we feel. Every like, every comment, every share, every subscription, every piece of engagement, every view is just so important to us. We appreciate it. Small is all. We are building something bigger here and building towards something bigger here. And you know what we say, conflict is here to teach you something about yourself. So go out there and find out what that is. I'm Justin.
And I'm Dr. Lynn.
We'll see you next week.